Hi, everybody. How are you doing today? Welcome to our webinar. Today's webinar is going to be on clinical updates, genomic research studies in gastric cancer by Dr. Adam Bass. My name is Andrea Eidelman, and I'm the Executive Director of Debbie's Dream Foundation, and I will also be your moderator here today. Thank you to our generous sponsors, Lilly Oncology and Merck. Today's agenda is displayed as follows. There will be a brief introduction. We will talk a little bit about Debbie's Dream Foundation, and then we're going to be moving right into our presentation by Dr. Adam Bass, and then we'll have some questions and answers. Here are some basic facts about stomach cancer. It is estimated that more than 26,000 Americans will be diagnosed with this very deadly disease each year, and more than 11,000 will die of the disease. At stage 4, the 5-year survival rate is 5%. The overall 5-year survival rate is 30%. We are also seeing a higher incidence with people with stomach cancer, and there is very little still to be known about this very deadly disease. A little bit about our founder. Debbie Zellman was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer in 2008. 40 years old, no risk factors, mother of 3. And when she was diagnosed, there had not been a new treatment for over 30 years. Debbie started the foundation in 2009 to aggressively fund stomach cancer research. The foundation has now been around for 10 years, and Debbie, unfortunately, lost her battle to the disease on December 23rd of 2017. Debbie's Dream Foundation is a 501c3 non-for-profit organization dedicated to raising awareness about stomach cancer, funding research, and providing education and support to patients and families internationally. We seek as our ultimate goal to make the cure for stomach cancer a reality. We have 29 chapters in the United States, Canada, and Germany. We also have our patient resource education program that provides mentoring services for patients and caregivers. We also host stomach cancer education symposia and many webinars. And we have funded $950,000 in research grant funding to date. Here is a picture of our new website that we're very proud that we have transitioned over. So please explore www.debbiesdream.org. Some of our upcoming events will be one this coming weekend, our 10th annual Night of Laughter. And please join us at our 7th annual Capitol Hill Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C., February 25th and 26th. This is probably one of our most important events because we will be advocating for increased federal funding for stomach cancer. And these are the big dollars that will help fund stomach cancer research and hopefully make a very large impact in finding a cure for this deadly disease. Those dates again are February 25th and 26th. We are also offering scholarships to those that want to attend and need financial assistance with flights and hotels. For more information, just contact events@debbiesdream.org. And here again is our contact information, our mailing information, our office phone number, and email addresses for different departments here at the foundation. And now I introduce the presenter of today's webinar, Dr. Adam Bass from Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Dr. Bass, we're passing this over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you.
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thanks for a chance to talk about some work we're doing, and I'm gonna talk through a new research project that we are part of that we're very excited about, where we're trying to reach directly out to patients, both in esophageal and in gastric cancer. Oh, there we go. Okay. And so the idea of this project is that we want to create the capability to bring data together to understand the genomic and molecular and clinical features of lots, really thousands of patients with all kinds of cancer, but in this case, cancers of the gastric and related esophageal cancers. And ask the question is, if we could understand the features of so many different manners of features, from the types of changes in the DNA to how people do on particular therapies, can we understand these associations between the biology and the clinic and use this to advance therapy for all of our patients? And in order to do this, we're part of a nonprofit initiative called Count Me In, whose goal is to create capability for people all over the country and in Canada to participate in cancer research and to allow us to learn from their experiences, including people who might not otherwise be engaged with research, or it be because of where they live or where they're getting their care. And so where we're going is going to be talking about this new project called the Esophageal and Gastric Cancer Project, that's going to allow people all over the country to go online and join our project and allow us to learn from them, learn from what happens during their care, and to help us build something bigger that should not just help us do science, but help everyone do science to advance therapy of this cancer. And as I'll mention later, our goal is to build data, but also share data so that everyone can be more empowered to pursue research into these cancers. And so before going into too many details, I thought it was useful just to take a little look back and think about the big picture of why we're doing this and how this is going to help. So it's often said that cancer is a disease of the genome being the DNA in each of our cells of each of our bodies. And what the DNA is basically a cookbook for making everything that a cell needs to do, making all the proteins that do all of the work in our cells. And what happens in cancer is that there are certain proteins or genes that make cells grow, and those become activated. And there are certain proteins that essentially stop cells from growing, and those get turned off in cancer cells. And so learning about the genes that are altered in cancers is a critical way to understand how individual cancers work and how we might best take care of patients. And we know this is important, and actually many people already get some form of cancer DNA profiling as part of their standard clinical care. Because we know that a lot of the genes that make cancer grow are also good therapeutic targets, because if there's a gene making cancer grow, if you take that away, that could be a potent way to help a patient. And what's important is that the many different cancers, or even people with the same cancer, can have cancers that look the same under the microscope, but the genes that are involved can be quite different. And this is why we think now that if we profile the genome, we could pick different therapies for different patients. And so that's the reason why so many people in the clinic are getting genome profiling, to see if we could use that to guide therapy. For example, we do HER2 testing in stomach and esophageal cancer to find people who may benefit from the drug Herceptin. But beyond how we can use genome profiling to pick individual therapies now, such as picking patients who might benefit from the Herceptin, there's a lot else that we can learn by studying the DNA of cancer. So all the different features of individual patients' cancers can impact the cancer behavior. It could impact how likely the cancer is to recur after surgery, how much different cancers may respond to different therapies, how long the responses last, how they become resistant to therapy. But the problem is that we don't know enough about these features. We don't know how all these different characteristics of a cancer changes how the cancer acts. And really, to do this well, we need to have data, and data from a lot of people. Really thousands of people, where we understand the molecular features of the cancer, understand about the patient's the therapy, that we could make these connections and learn how to better take care of people in the future. The idea is if we can understand all the different ways that cancer is different between patients, and then we can understand how that correlates with what happens to people, we can use that in the future to make therapy better. And if we could understand what's going to make the cancers resistant or respond to certain therapies, we could use that information to make new and better therapies in the future. And basically, just really understanding all of this information allows us just to understand how these cancers work. And understanding how cancers work can lead to many advances. But one issue that we deal with right now is that most people with cancer in this country aren't treated at big research centers where they're trying to collect this information. Most people are treated in the community. But now we're living in a world where we have all kinds of new tools that's going to allow us to reach out to people all over the country and to get them the ability to participate in this research, so we can build bigger data sets and learn more and learn faster. And so our ultimate goal now is to really understand what makes each cancer work, and to learn to identify all the different features of the cancer genome in different patients, and think about how this is going to impact the optimal way to take care of patients, and how the cancer is going to change over time and become, unfortunately, resistant to certain therapies. And there's a lot that we could do in this space by reaching out to more patients. And the idea is that if we could reach out to people all over the country and get this data together, build a data set on the clinical and the molecular features of cancer, there's a huge amount that not only we can learn, but everyone can learn. So we want to build these data and share them with all of the researchers in the country, all the researchers in the world. And that's the whole basis of this idea of Count Me In, to create the ability for people anywhere to participate in cancer research and help us build something that no single center could build on its own, and do it in a way that helps everyone do better, faster science. And so to enable this, so Count Me In formed it's been working over the last couple of years, but formed as its own nonprofit just in the last few months. And what this is formed by several philanthropic and cancer research centers, and Vice President Biden's cancer initiative to build this nonprofit that's going to have a goal of building projects in most major cancer types, and even less common cancer types over the coming years. And this is an example. So this was the first project that started from Count Me In, a project in metastatic breast cancer that launched in 2015. And this was the web page where people could sign up for the project. And so, what was this project? What are we building? And so this is a research project which has been approved by our local research ethics board. So it's a real bona fide research project. Even though it's run out of our here in Boston, it really is reaching out to everyone across the country, where anyone, in this case for this project was metastatic breast cancer, can sign up online and share information about their tumor and their therapy and give consent for the team to get the clinical records, get consent for the team to get samples of their tumor and perform genome research, and also consent to share the data, not listing the patient's name, but to share the data to researchers everywhere. And this was just an example from the website of sort of what happens, how you had the opportunity to give information about yourself, to sign up online, give information, and then provide the ability to characterize the actual cancer sample. And here's just a map of the over 5,000 people that have signed up for this project in all 50 states and also in Canada. About over 5,000 patients. And these are the people who've consented over time. The blue is people who've signed up at all. Green is, red to sign the actual consent for research. And then in green and then purple were the people more recently who've contributed either saliva samples or blood samples for this project. So you can see, in breast cancer starting in 2015, we've built up to over 1,000 people who've contributed samples. And this just makes the point that even though there are certain centers like MD Anderson, Dana-Farber, and Sloan Kettering that had many patients sign up, there are over 1,200 different centers with a single patient who signed up. So we're getting people all over the US and Canada who signed up for this project. And this slide just makes the point that there are certain places where cancer researchers go to access data, and we've been uploading the information from our project to these portals where people everywhere are able scientists everywhere are able to get access to these data and use them. So it's very important. We're not waiting until we publish papers to put the data out, but as soon as the data are generated, or every 6 months, the data are going out so that scientists can use what we have. And this is just a little bit of a more sciencey slide, but it's just basically showing. Oops, sorry, back. It was just showing what the actual way that the data look that people are able to see. So in terms of how this is different from many other research programs, this is really patient-centered and reaching out to people everywhere. And our goal is to reach the people living in places and in the communities who may not as easily or often be engaged in research. And our goal is to really build huge numbers of patients, huge numbers that allow us to answer very important questions that, again, us working at Dana-Farber or people working at other big cancer centers couldn't do on their own, but to do something big. And again, to bring together clinical, genomic, and patient data into one data set that people everywhere can have access to, and that we share it to build something that that really makes the field move faster. And also is we want to be engaged and view the patients as partners, so that it might mean, and our goal is that patients who are part of this project, it's not just a one-time event, but we could reach back and recontact people and learn as the events change in cancer, as people try different therapies, that we're always learning and building data that can shape the field and help everyone understand how to take better care of patients with these cancers. And this is just an example of actually for many people that participating in this project could be quite empowering. This is just postings people made from the metastatic breast cancer project, just as they got their kits and were able to contribute. How for many it was very meaningful to be able to participate in something that's going to that we hope give back and make therapy better for everyone in the future. And so, that was in metastatic breast cancer, which obviously is, a very important cancer, but can we do this in other places? So, for example, we built a project over about 2 years ago in a very uncommon kind of tumor called angiosarcoma, something that affects only about 300 patients every year, and it's a quite lethal cancer. And because it was so uncommon, there wasn't a lot of data. So in this case, we built a similar project to reach out to patients with this uncommon cancer. And it was very exciting that since the project has launched, over 300 people have signed up for the project. And again, this is only a tumor type that involves, or that afflicts about 300 people per year. And also it's very exciting that even in this cancer where we lacked a lot of genome information, now there's data from this project that are released to the public domain, and over 5,000 people have viewed this data, and over about 30 people view this data every day. So now it creates the capability to do more scientific research in angiosarcoma. So the third project that was launched from Calmein was one in metastatic prostate cancer, and that started a little over a year ago. But now this is where we are right now. So we launched a project that we called the Gastroesophageal Cancer Project. It had a soft launch in October. We've actually been thinking about how to better engage with patients, and so we actually, as of tomorrow, the project is formally rechanging its name. We're calling it the Esophageal and Stomach Cancer Project. We think that maybe that name will resonate better than gastroesophageal. And how does this work? So it means that any patient with a diagnosis of or history of stomach or esophageal cancer can sign up. All they have to go to is a simple website, escproject.org. And once they sign up, there's a relatively simple survey, definitely maybe 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, but clearly not terribly onerous, to provide some basic history of their cancer history and the therapy they've received. And it's not mandatory, but if they want, they're able to consent to additional research. And that would mean allowing the team to obtain medical records from the center where they've had their therapy, and even to obtain old tissue samples that are available from their old surgery or old biopsies, and for genome research, and also to provide samples of blood and saliva. So I know some of this sounds a little bit, could be a little weird and onerous, but let's actually, talk about what this means. The idea of sending a sample of saliva from wherever you're living to scientists in Boston might sound a little bit strange, but it's actually not very hard. So once you sign up, we will send you what's a little kit, a little box, and have a little plastic container for the saliva or the spit. And all you do is you fill it in and put it back in the mail in the package that we can provide. So why are we asking for that? So saliva is actually a way to get the normal DNA, not the DNA in the cancer, but the representation of the normal DNA that you inherited from your parents, which is a useful comparison to understand how the cancer is different than normal. And also is a way that we can learn about some of the ways that everyone is different and how that might influence cancer risk and cancer behavior. Now we're also asking people to contribute blood. Now, again, sending saliva from where you live to Boston sounds complicated. Sending blood sounds very complicated. But again, we make this, or we do everything we can to make this simple. And the reason we were trying to get blood is that there's a very exciting new field of research right now, understanding that cancer cells, what we say, shed or leak DNA into the blood, And so we're getting very good now at being able to take blood samples and isolate the cancer DNA as a simple, relatively non-invasive way to learn about the cancer DNA. And so to be able to get blood for cancer DNA studies across the country, we also have a similar kit, a little box that shows up in the mail with a special blood tube. And whenever you're going to your doctor for regular blood work, all you can do is give them that tube and a note that we give you, and they can put blood in that tube, and then basically you just turn the tube up and down a couple of times, and we give you a package to mail it back to us. So this has been quite effective, and we've had many people able to send us blood, both for stomach and esophageal cancer, but also for the other projects as well. Now, the idea of having to share medical records also sounds kind of onerous, but for this, you don't have to do anything. If you consent and fill out the basic survey, that gives our team the ability to go and request information from the clinic and hospital where you've had your care, and then the team can go through the records and help build out our clinical database, and also figure out if there's a tumor sample available that's feasible to use for research. And if there is, we'll ask them, the hospital, to send us part of that sample for research. And it's important to note that we're not going to use up all of anything. We're always going to make sure that we leave needed material behind in case it's needed for clinical care in the future. So where are we now? So we had a relatively soft launch of our project in October with some posts on social media, and then things slowed down around the holidays. But even so, we've already had 109 patients sign up just in the first 3 months. We've sent out 81 saliva kits, 47 have come back so far. We've sent out 71 blood kits, 34 have come back, and we're starting now to receive medical records and go through them, and are gearing up to requesting tumor samples. So where are we trying to go with this? Our goal is to make this big and expand to many more patients, and not just to learn from people one time, but to make this as a way that we could learn about stomach and esophageal cancer during the course of cancer therapy. Our goal is to build this so we can recontact people over time to see how their therapies have changed and how their tumors have responded or not responded to different therapies. And as well as we can also have the capability of not just getting someone's blood sample once, but get it over time. For example, after a patient might have received a drug like Herceptin, and then the tumor is starting to grow again, we want to know what is it that made that tumor be able to become resistant to Herceptin. And if we can get samples from people all over the country when that happens, we could figure that out much faster, and that'll be the next way that we could find new therapies for tumors when Herceptin, say, stops working. And also, we could learn about all kinds of things from the cancer, not just the cancer DNA, but now that, for example, many patients are getting immunotherapy, if we have the tumor samples from people who did or did not do well with immunotherapy, we could start to understand what are the features that predict response, and how do we start to develop new therapies for people who don't benefit from the current drugs. So again, this is our goal, is we want to make a publicly available database of clinical, genome, molecular, and patient-reported data, and make this available so we can speed the development of new therapies for all cancers, in this case for stomach and esophageal cancer. And so just before turning it over to questions, I wanted to just play out a couple things that people might ask. The first thing is, will patient identity be revealed? And the answer is no. We're very careful to maintain people's confidentiality, and even though data are reported, there's no name. It will say tumor, ABC had this mutation and the patient got this therapy, but there's no actual name, so that's there. So it's only it's only listed by codes. Some people are going to ask if they'll get their data back. Unfortunately, because this is a research study, we're not legally allowed to do that, at least not now. I'll just leave it at that. But unfortunately, this is it's not a we're not here to guide individual patients' therapy. We're here to create something that helps the field learn. So this would be a complement to the any other work that's done on people's tumors, such as sending it to Foundation Medicine or other companies or centers that do cancer profiling. And can you withdraw? So yes, anytime. So once you're in, it doesn't bind you to being part of the project. You could always remove yourself. We also want to say that this is not a for-profit venture. We're not trying to sell data. The data is going to be put out in ways that everyone can use freely. People who are government scientists at the National Cancer Institute, academic scientists, even people who are in industry figuring out how to make new cancer medicines can use this. And as since we're not selling it, of course, the question is, how is this being paid for? But this is a large philanthropic program made by a large wealthy foundation that's really asking the question about how do we, what is it that we could do to really change the face of cancer medicine? And this is what they're trying to do. So in terms of how people can get engaged, the first thing we are asking, of course, is for people to consider signing up, and not just signing up, but also sharing the fact that they signed up and post it on social media, and or talk about it in patient support groups. And along that line, one of the things that can really make this project grow and be successful is by engaging with patients and having patients who help us build this project. And often what's made the projects in breast or prostate or angiosarcoma very successful is when individual people who unfortunately are afflicted with these cancers say, well, I'm in this bad situation, but I'm going to find a way to make something out of it, and I'm going to reach out to more people, and I'm going to try to help build this project, and I don't know if it's going to help me, but it will help someone someday. So to the extent that people want to engage with us and help to build this project, we would be very enthusiastic to have your support. And that could include being an ambassador, reaching out to other patients, either online in chat groups or in person, or even being part of our working group. Everything that we have, our surveys, everything was formed in collaboration with a group of patients and who helped us shape the questions to engage this community. And so again, these are the links. And I want to thank a huge number of people who are involved in this exciting project, including our advocacy partners, and we're now reaching out to more and more foundations to build this, including Debbie's Dream and Target Cancer, who's one of their members on the phone. And so I think with that, I want to stop. I think that's my last slide, and just give a chance for anyone who has any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bass. That was so informative. We do have a couple of questions that have come in for you. The first is, how should one go about getting genomic testing? Would they contact their doctor? Can you explain the process?
So yeah, so I guess there's two ways to think about it. So ours is a research project, and so it's by no means supposed to be a replacement for the kind of genomic testing that people might do in order to think about what kind of therapy they might get. So the genome testing that's done in that situation is not research testing, but done in a clinical lab where the data can be returned to patients. And so that's definitely a place where talking to your physician can be the way to see about getting that done. And there are different ways that can be done. There are certain hospitals that do their own testing, and that's generally true in the really big cancer centers like Dana-Farber, where we have our own capability, but you definitely don't need to be treated at a big academic hospital to have that done. So, for example, there are a number of companies where you can have either tumor tissue or even blood sent to look at the profile of the cancer, and that would be a way to think about not just research, but think about how to take care of the individual patient. So that's definitely a place to reach out to your physician.
Okay, thank you. There is another question. Is there a cost for genomic testing, and does insurance cover this type of testing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously, so the testing, not, I mean, our research doesn't have a fee, but so the clinical genomic testing does have a fee, um, at least when it's done commercially. I think generally the insurance has been paying for that testing, at least for for having it done once. I don't know if that's always true for repeat testing, but in some cases they are paying for that too. But and so it's definitely something that is more commonly paid for by insurance. Even now, there are some tests that are approved by Medicare. So this often gets paid for as part of routine care.
Thank you. The next question is, how accurate are the test results? And is the blood more accurate than the saliva testing? Is there a distinction to be made
That's
between those
Yeah,
two?
that's a great question. So the saliva testing is not done to study the tumor. The saliva is a source of normal DNA, or the DNA of the non-cancer cells. So the blood. So to look at the tumor DNA, there are that's where either people will get the actual tumor sample and take part of the actual tumor sample that came from the biopsy or surgery and take DNA out of that for genomic analysis, or people will take the DNA that's circulating in the blood that gets shed by the cancer. So that's an active area of research, is to not just which is more accurate, but what's the relative value of those two. Um, you know the you definitely, if you actually have a piece of tumor and you get some DNA from it, that's the most sensitive way to get information about the cancer that you have, or at least the cancer that you have in the sample. So you could learn a lot from that. The potential benefit of blood DNA is two. One is that you can get it without having to do a biopsy or surgery. So it's easier, of course, to get blood than to sample an actual tumor. The other theoretic benefit is that when you study the cancer, like a piece of cancer from surgery, you're studying the piece that you took. And there's some ideas now that are growing that the features of tumors can be heterogeneous, meaning that the DNA of not every cancer is the same. And so there's some ideas emerging that the blood gives you more information about the diversity that's present. So I think this is still an active research area. So we don't know. I think so. There are the technologies for studying cancer DNA in the actual tissue are more mature, but the blood field is advancing very rapidly, and I think that is a very exciting area. But there's no hard and fast rule about which is better.
Okay. Another question is if a patient gives a blood and a saliva sample, will they get the results or will it go to kind of some type of other physician or other, tracking center? Will they get the
Ah,
results?
yeah. So for this, at least as of now, for this research project, we are not able to report back results to patients. Um, I'll leave aside the question of whether that might change in the future, but because of the 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 rules in place about um, research results, we're not able to report those back. So again, I think this is participating in this project is really should be viewed as a way to contribute to research and to help the scientific community advance therapy for these cancers. It's less, it's not a service for trying to find the individual therapy for individual patients. I think again, for doing that, still the best way is to work with your physician about getting the profiling done on either the tumor or the blood from a laboratory um, that is a clinical lab that can report the data back. So this is a research project, not one that is for reporting data back to patients.
Okay, well, thank you. Um, that concludes all the questions, Dr. Bass, that we have received. I would like to thank everybody for joining this wonderful webinar and learning about genomic testing and all the possibilities for the future. And thank you to our sponsors with Lilly Oncology and Merck.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.